Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. I am Scott McGregor. Welcome to Blue Jays Weekly Recap. Today, let's go back to briefly discuss the homestand in August between the Cubs, Rangers, and of course your Blue Jays, as well as the road trip that led to quite an interesting homestand between the Twins and the Jays, as well as the Brew Crew and the Jays. All that and more, plus what went down in Cincinnati. Blue Jays Weekly Recap starts right now. Welcome to Sports for Beginners. This is the show where I cover the Pittsburgh Penguins, Toronto Blue Jays, and take you on a journey through the world of sports. From the fans' perspective, here is your host, Scott McGregor. Let's have some fun. Good afternoon and welcome in to Blue Jays Weekly Recap here on Sports for Beginners. My name is Scott McGregor, your host of the program. This is immediately following the conclusion series of Blue Jays game recap featuring the Toronto Blue Jays and the Cincinnati Reds. We'll talk about Cincy and Toronto coming up momentarily before the end of the show as we get you ready for the Yankees and the Blue Jays. This show is dropping on the day we do a season episode of Sports for Beginners for season number 4, but this is a bonus content episode in place of that episode to drop on September the 5th, 2025. Speaking of that, before we get into the baseball topic, football fans alike, tonight the 2025 NFL season begins. At the time of our recording, our first game is the Eagles and the Cowboys rather. Game time is at 8:20 p.m. Eastern tonight, but don't get it too comfortable just yet because we got more action in week number 1. Of course, you got a packed Sunday schedule leading up to Sunday Night Football, and then, of course, Monday Night Football to end week 1. But just before we get to the packed schedule on Sunday, September the 7th, this Friday, tomorrow, by the time this drops, it's the Chargers versus the Chiefs from Sao Paulo, Brazil. Game time 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific. That also for the Eagles and the Cowboys game from Lincoln Financial Field, which goes down tonight at the time of our recording, is 8:20 p.m. Eastern, 7:20 p.m. Central, 5:20 p.m. Pacific, 6:20 p.m. Mountain. So you got Chargers and Chiefs tomorrow by the time this show drops. Eagles, Cowboys tonight in the NFL opening night schedule of week number 1. Let's talk baseball. First and foremost, we like to start off our lead off with, well, our series covered. And we've welcomed you in already to Blue Jays Weekly Recap. There is a ton that we need to get into, so we are going to base it off of themes for this episode. Beginning with theme number 1, takeaways from past homestand and past road trip. These will include the series between the Blue Jays and the Cubs, as well as the Blue Jays and the Rangers. It will also include that road series in Pittsburgh, as well as the road series in Miami as well. Let's start at home. The Blue Jays enter Rogers Center after going into Colorado and mopping the floor with the Rockies, winning those games on August the 4th, 5th, and 6th, 15-1 winners on Monday, August the 4th, 2025. On Tuesday, the 5th, 2025, they knock off the Rockies 10-4, and they absolutely obliterated the Rockies 20-1 in Wednesday's finale against the Rockies to sweep Colorado's 3-game series in Colorado. Again, the final scores, Monday it was 15-1, Tuesday 10-4, and Wednesday 20-1. By this time, the Blue Jays did not have Shane Bieber, and also Shane Bieber was still recovering from Tommy John surgery. He would not play until the following road trip that led up to the past homestand, which we will get to momentarily. And no, I'm not talking about the Cubs and the Rangers homestand. I'm talking about the homestand after that. So, moving right along, first of all, the Blue Jays winning all three of those games in Colorado, I thought at least they would take two. I thought at least they would take two. I didn't expect them to take all three. But hey, a big series win for the Blue Jays against the Rockies. I loved how they managed to salvage that series against the Dodgers, in which they lost Friday and Saturday. They lost 5-1 Friday. Saturday they lost 9-1. Able to salvage that series on Sunday, August 2025, with a 5-4 win over the Dodgers and Shohei Ohtani. What a day for the Blue Jays that was, however. Blue Jays opened up the homestand with a bang against the Cubs, following that, which would begin on the 12th and wrap up on the 17th. I included the 17th because that is when the Rangers series ended, but the Cubs series ended on the 14th. Cubs managed to take 1 out of 3 over the Blue Jays in that homestand. The Blue Jays taking Tuesday night's game 5-1. That was on the 5th. That was on the 12th of August. On the 14th of August, the Wednesday, they also took the finale of that series by a score of 2-1. They fell in Wednesday's game 4-1 to the Cubs. The Cubbies winning the game on Wednesday 4-1. They lost to the Jays on Tuesday 5-1 and 2-1 on Thursday. Blue Jays opened up a banger of a series with Texas, winning both the first two games of the series on Friday, the 15th of August, and Saturday, the 16th of August. Final scores, Saturday it was 14-2, Blue Jays. Friday it was 6-5 in favor of the Jays. And then the Jays, they salvage the series, but they actually win the series with those 14-2 and 6-5 wins Friday and Saturday. Texas able to take the last game of that series, 10-4, the final there in favor of the Rangers, which would set up a road trip where the Blue Jays would go 3-3, losing 2 out of 3 to the Pirates. Final scores of 5-2 and 2-1 in favor of the Pirates. They took game number 2 of that series, 7-3, the final, in favor of the Jays. Jays won the first two games of the series, I should say, against Miami on August 22nd to August 24th. The road trip began on August the 18th and wrapped up on August 20th. But it began in Pittsburgh. The series with Miami began on Friday, August 22nd, 2025, in which the Jays defeated Miami 5-2. They also almost lost that game to Miami on Saturday, but found a way to win 7-6. That's a very close game. Another key takeaway coming from that road trip before the Dodgers series, that was the 3-game series smacking the Blue Jays gave the Rockies with quite literally one of the best performances on a Wednesday I've ever seen the Jays do. I expected the Blue Jays to win the game, even if they had won games 1 and 2 already by big margins, but I did not expect the Blue Jays to go out into Colorado in the last game and absolutely obliterate baseballs at Coors Field, let alone win a baseball game by 19 runs like they did in the finale of the Colorado series earlier in August. Anywho, back to the Miami series. Final scores of the Blue Jay wins were 5-2 Friday, and Saturday it was 7-6 in favor of the Jays. The Jays moved into the series with Milwaukee as the team with the best record in baseball. But we'll get to that in a second. Wrapping up the Miami recap here, series of that. 5-3 losers the Jays were to the Miami Marlins in yet another game that they were able to win a series, but salvage having an opportunity to sweep Miami, and Miami avoided the sweep. And Miami, I should say, avoided the sweep. You talk about other teams that avoid sweeps? Well, the Minnesota Twins avoided a sweep from even happening when they came to town after losing the first two games, or the first game, I should say. They lost the first and final game of the series to the Jays. Final scores were 9-8 Blue Jays over the Twins in the finale of the Twins series. Twins winning 7-5 in the middle game of that series, and the Jays pounding Minnesota 10-4 in the opener on Monday. Blue Jays, not so much a great start against the number one team in baseball and number one team in the National League in the Milwaukee Brewers, the Brew Crew. They ended up losing to the Brewers in the first two games of the series, which included final scores of 7-2 on Friday night, City Connect night in the ballpark. They also lost on Saturday, 4-1. Able to salvage the series with an 8-4 win over the Brewers to go 3-3 at home after going 3-3 on the road. So far for this current road trip, as we get to that, and that is where we will take our first break of the show. The Blue Jays lost the opener to Cincinnati, the team they have recently just played, by a final score on Monday, September the 1st, which was Labor Day. They lost to Cincinnati 5-4. But boy, oh boy, the last 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, these past 2 days, 3 days when you hear this tomorrow on our show, Blue Jays 12-9 winners over the Cincinnati Reds on Tuesday. And then, by the way, the 5-4 win for the Reds, I should say, was a walk-off in an afternoon game on Monday afternoon. The other two games played out at nighttime at 6:40 p.m. Eastern, both on Tuesday and Wednesday, which was yesterday at the time of our recording. Anywho, the Blue Jays winning Tuesday and Wednesday. They win Tuesday's game 12-9, and then they pick up a 13-9 win over the Reds on Wednesday last night. As we are recording this on a Thursday, it'll drop tomorrow. It might even drop today. Regardless when it does, we're getting you ready for Yankees and Blue Jays, the final showdown in the Bronx and final showdown of the regular season. Should the Yankees and the Blue Jays find themselves battling in the playoffs? We'll talk about the playoffs and much more coming up in our next segment of shows, which is new guys playing in Toronto, key takeaways. Well, guess what? This time, new guys playing in Toronto, the segment there that we call it, guess what? We're calling it returners. You're going to find out what I mean by that in just a few minutes. Stay with us. Blue Jays Weekly Recap continues with new guys playing in Toronto up next, plus key series takeaways, specifically from the previous homestand, which was between the Milwaukee Brewers and, of course, the Minnesota Twins against the Toronto Blue Jays. We're also going to do a key takeaway from the road trip, one of those series in the road trip, when the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Miami Marlins each hosted 3 games against the Toronto Blue Jays. We will do that coming up next. And, of course, I will give you a takeaway from a wild series in Cincy between the Blue Jays and the Reds. All that and more coming up. Plus, we'll take a look at the standings later on as we close things down. That will be in our halfway mark. We mentioned the NFL. I will briefly remind you of a update on the NFL content coming to our show. I should say returning to our show. But that will be in what we call Last Call. where we will not only set up our next Blue Jays weekly recap, which will be our final one of this season. And yes, it will also be a bonus content show. We are going to try to line up some interviews for the continuation of season 4. So be sure to stick with us during last call to find out who is possibly on deck to be on our show. Also want to remind you to stay with us later in the week, I should say, as we prepare for that Houston and Baltimore homestand for more Blue Jays game recap as the road trip continues into the Bronx. We'll continue getting you ready for that as Blue Jays weekly recap continues. With that said, new guys in Toronto for this edition called Returners to Toronto, and key series takeaways are on deck next. Stay with us.
CNT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down, nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on CNT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on CNT Radio.
Hey, what's up, Bills Mafia? It's your host, Scott McGregor. Please call me Scott. Sports for Beginners has a very special treat for you this NFL season, with week 1 beginning this week for the 2025 season. You know we love doing Dolphins postgame for all those Dolphin fans out there. So that's why this message is for Bills fans, Dolphins fans, and football fans alike. Join us on Monday, September 8th, 2025 for a triple play. What do you mean, Scott? What do you mean by triple play? Well, here's what I mean. Immediately following Dolphins postgame on Sports for Beginners on Monday, which will recap the Week 1 matchup between the Dolphins and the Indianapolis Colts, hosted by our good friend Thomas McGregor, I'm with you for a pregame/postgame show. That's right before kickoff between the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens for Sunday Night Football. Then later, and more likely being recorded on Monday, it's the return of Bills postgame. You can catch both Bills postgame and Dolphins postgame on the ice and behind the benches as a double play. But here on Sports for Beginners, you are catching a triple play. First, Dolphins Colts recap on Dolphins postgame. Then, Bills Ravens preview on Bills on before they kick off. Not Bills. It's a Bills pregame show, but it's before they kick off is what the title is. Then on Bills postgame later, it's Bills Ravens recap from Sunday Night Football, or SNF. Spoiler alert, we might also pick who we think is going to win this week's Monday Night Football main event. Monday Night Football is short-formed in MNF. So don't miss out. Make sure that you're subscribed. You do not want to miss this football content. That's a triple play with Dolphins postgame before they kick off, a pregame show for the Buffalo Bills, and Bills postgame all in one this week only on Sports for Beginners. That was a brief promo I did there as we welcome you back into Blue Jays game recap. Blue Jays, not game recap, Blue Jays weekly recap, excuse me. Time now before we get into the big news about some returning players to Toronto and everything surrounding the previous road trip series, leading up to this upcoming road trip series and the previous homestand. Time now to take a look at, first of all, the action around Major League Baseball. What is our action like around Major League Baseball today? Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for us here. We currently have one game underway. That is the Philadelphia Phillies and the Milwaukee Brewers, who are, as we sit here and monitor those games, the Brewers are 86 and 54. The Phillies are 80 and 59. Still to come today, at the time of our recording, the Pirates taking on the Dodgers. Dodgers record is 78-61. Pirates at 63-77. It is Blake Snell versus Skeens, who will go for the Pirates. We got the Guardians also on tap. They are taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. Record for the Rays is 70-69 going into play today. Guardians record 69-69. They are at 500. Their record is 69-69. That game coming up at 7:35 p.m. Eastern. Pirates and Dodgers at 6:40 p.m. Eastern, just about an hour or so away from now, as it is 4:42 p.m. Eastern. Coming up at 7:40 p.m. Eastern, 3 games on that slate. They include the Angels 66-73 against the 70-69 Royals of Kansas City. The New York Yankees are also in action. They wrap up a series with the Houston Astros tonight as they prepare for battle against the Blue Jays for Friday. We'll talk about that later. Record for the Yankees going into the finale of that series, 72-66. The Astros record is 77-63. Oh, pardon me. I meant to say the Yankee record is 77-62, not 72-62. Anyways, moving on. The White Sox also in action. They are 52-88, going up against the 62-77 Minnesota Twins. The Twins and the Brewers in action today, a team that the Blue Jays have faced before going on the road to take on Cincinnati, and of course, their upcoming road trip that begins tomorrow. It's the final time the Yankees and the Blue Jays will make it go down in the Bronx. That's going to be a big series. All right. New guys in Toronto. Well, more like returners. We mentioned Shane Bieber. And yeah, well, Shane, he was picked up in a trade, but had not played a game in a lot of years. That's right. Shane Bieber had not played a baseball game in a couple of days, I should say, not a lot of years. He did play in 2024, but that season was cut short. And it was his last season with the formerly known Cleveland Indians, now known as the Cleveland Guardians. They also were for a time known as the Cleveland baseball team, in which he made 2 starts for the Guardians that season, won each of those starts in the 2 games he played. He won each of those 2 games that he played in and started. Currently, in his first stint with the Blue Jays, he has a record of 2-1. His record going into his start against the Cincinnati Reds, which was his 3rd start of the season. He started against Milwaukee, picked up a loss in that game, and also made his 2025 debut and Blue Jays debut in Miami in a game which he struck out 9 Marlins, allowed 1 earned run, didn't walk a guy, 2 hits allowed in 6 innings of work. Blue Jays were able to pick up the victory for him, so he gets his first victory of the season, and it's in his debut game. Speaking of debuts, he also debuted at home against Milwaukee, but ended up going 5 1/3. Still putting up quite a good performance. 2 earned runs given up, 5 hits allowed, no batters walked, and 6 strikeouts, or in short form, 6 Ks for Shane. He followed that up with another K performance in last night's game when he started against the Cincinnati Reds. Went 6 innings. Blue Jays did enough to give him the win. He allowed 5 earned runs and 5 hits, walked 2 Reds batters, and struck out 6. So for the regular season, when you add the back-to-back sixes and the 9 strikeouts, Shane Bieber, who is 30 years old right now, has 21 strikeouts this season in 3 games started and played. He in an 17 and a third innings pitched. His ERA is 4.15, and he has a record of 2 wins and 1 loss. So he is 2-1. His whip for the season is .81. Another guy who has returned to the Blue Jays. Izzy's back. Izzy's back. Izzy's back. Isaiah Kiner Falefa is here, and he is back with the Toronto Blue Jays after being claimed off of waivers from the Pittsburgh Pirates. Didn't we just trade Isaiah before the end of last season? Why is he back? Well, whatever the case, the Blue Jays are in a good position, and I personally don't have any problem with Isaiah returning. It should be noted Isaiah was activated on the first day of the Reds series, and he would play eventually. Another guy the Blue Jays brought back. As we look at our September transactions, they brought back Ryan Borucki, who I understand did pitch in the series with the Reds. I'll take a look at the scoreboard there to make sure, but I understand, I believe he was able to pitch. The Blue Jays did select his contract on September 2nd. But when did they get him back? When did they get Borucki back? Well, I'm trying to find that. They did not. I don't see it in August. Oh no, there we go. It was actually on August 25th when he was signed, and guess what? He was a free agent. So he had not played this year yet with with either team in the MLB. Other guys that have recently come back, the Blue Jays have recalled Robinson Pena from the Buffalo Bisons. That was on the 2nd of September. He was later placed on the 60-day injured list with a right elbow UCL sprain. Easton Lucas was optioned to AAA Buffalo, in which case, in all those corresponding moves, Ryan Borucki's contract was selected from Buffalo. We do have some news for the Jays regarding injury news. Anthony Santander, we know, has not been back with the Jays for quite a while. Since May 30th, he was transferred to the 60-day IL on the American holiday, July the 4th. His expected return is potentially by the end of the season. Manager John Schneider said Santander is going to come to New York with the team and continue to hit instead of going out on a rehab assignment. The hope is that after the team leaves New York, the switch hitter will head to AAA Buffalo and begin his rehab there and work on hitting right-handed more so he can be ready to do both upon his return, updated as of yesterday, September the 3rd, 2025. More on it from Keegan Matheson. We don't necessarily know when Santander could be back, but Schneider said, according to this from Keegan Matheson, shout out to my boy Keegan, Schneider said, in quote, everyone understands where we are, knowing that we want to be the best version of everyone. Knowing that we want the best version of everyone. We'll decide then. He can definitely help us with the power profile and potential. If that's there, it's not just plugging him in there every day. It's about seeing what other people are doing when he is back. I wouldn't say difficult. I think he'll know when he's ready to. Okay. So I'm going to make a prediction. I feel if things go according to plan and Santander does well in a rehab assignment in AAA Buffalo after the New York series in which we know he will not play in, I believe he will either play in either the series on the road in Kansas City or one of the two remaining games of the homestand in the last homestand of the season, if indeed he is ready to go by the potential end of the season. So we've got 9 home games left. We got, at this point, counting the Yankees series, which is 3 games, we got 3 against Kansas City the weekend after the Baltimore series in Toronto, and we got 4 against Tampa Bay beginning on Monday, September 15th. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 games. If you add the series that begins tomorrow in New York, which is a 3-game series, and you add on those 7 I just mentioned, in total, the Blue Jays have 10 road games left going into this series with the New York Yankees. They have 10 road games left and 9 home games. Well, actually 12 home games since all three against Houston, 3 against Baltimore. That's a 6-game homestand. 3 against Boston, and then 3 against Tampa Bay to close out the season. That's another 6-game homestand. So you're looking at, in terms of games as we sit here, you're looking at 12 home games left specifically, and 10 road games, including the 3 coming up on Friday and this weekend in New York. I would say Anthony either plays in one of the games at home in Boston's series or against Tampa Bay in the final home series of the 2025 season. I don't think he plays on the road. We know for a fact he won't play this weekend against New York. I don't think he's going to play at home against Houston and Baltimore. It would not shock me if he played against Tampa Bay when the Blue Jays are on the road, let alone if he played in Kansas City. But I just don't think that's going to happen. I feel he's going to play either against Boston or Tampa Bay in Toronto when he's ready to go. Another thing I want to talk about here before we go to our second of 3 commercial breaks is Jeff Hoffman. Now, why am I bringing up Jeff Hoffman? Well, I don't want to quote Jeff Blair, but there was something that Jeff said on the post-game show when the Blue Jays lost 5-4. I am going to read the quote, however, from that show, but I'm not going to quote you, Jeff, on it because I honestly do agree with you. I do. I honestly do. Like, first of all, there are the guys in the bullpen that, stink, and then there are guys in the pen that get called upon and they don't stink, and then everybody thinks this guy's better than me. The way Jeff phrased it was, you know what? Why don't I just provide the link? It was taking a while for me to find the transcript up, so why don't I just provide you the link and you can hear, in case you haven't heard or you want to hear it again. I don't know why you want to, but just saying. There was a point where Jeff said something along the lines that I do agree with, but I also feel like we're being too hard on the bullpen. We're being too hard on the Blue Jay bullpen. Like, listen, when your starter gives you 6, 7 innings, 5 and a third, or 4 and a third, or even 6 and a third innings, whatever it is that they end up as a starter, they've just saved you a couple innings for your bullpen guys to go out there and do what they do. Now, the Blue Jays in the Red Series, especially in game 1, they had to go through quite a bit of guys. Let me run down the guys that were used. You had, after Chris Bassett went 6 innings, only gave up 5 hits, 2 earned runs, struck out 6, and walked 2 batters. You went to Yariel Rodriguez, Tommy Nance. Then you went to Brandon Little, who eventually ended up with the loss. Now, when you go into the win, let's go to Tuesday, which was the first win of that series. Let's go to Tuesday. First of all, you bring up Dylan Tate. He pitches in this game. You also go to Eric Lauer, who at a time was in the starting rotation. Now he's in the bullpen. Then you go Louis Varland, Sir Anthony Dominguez, and Jeff Hoffman. Look, I'm going to leave it at this. I don't want to badmouth nobody, especially the bullpen for the Jays, but I'm going to leave it at this. Give the bullpen a break. They're trying to make sure they get the necessary outs that need to be gotten. And we have seen on occasions, very certain occasions, even this season, we have seen that the Blue Jays pitchers in the bullpen, Eric Lauer, Louis Varland, Brandon Little, even Jeff Hoffman, have had times where they have had to find the strike zone and had trouble doing so. But listen, I don't care how good you are. I don't care how good your bullpen is. The thing I look for when I look at the Blue Jays and I look at all other teams in the MLB is, can you hang with the teams that are riding high? And also, if you're not a great team, maybe not a good team, can you hang around with the teams that aren't as good as you are? And if you're good, can you hang around with teams that are as good as you are? Because let's face it, nobody's perfect. The Blue Jays are not perfect. Let me just say that. The Blue Jays are not perfect. The Red Sox are not perfect. The Orioles, I don't even want to think about the Orioles right now. I mean, the Orioles, they're not having a good year. I'm just going to put it plain and simple. They're not having a good year. They're 17 games out of the division, 9 games out of the wild card, but they're making headway. When we come back on Blue Jays Weekly Recap, I know I've mentioned game recap a couple of times, but keeping it to Blue Jays Weekly Recap, when we come back, we're going to go to we're going to go to a little bit more of an MLB standings update. Get a look at that ongoing game between the Philadelphia Phillies and the Brewers. I'll give you my key takeaway of the Cincinnati Reds series against the Reds, between the Jays and the Reds. Plus, we will start to close things up by setting up last call with what can you expect on the next episode of Sports for Beginners, followed by, of course, our next Blue Jays Weekly Recap. We will get that all to you in a break time. It is important to note that on our last episode of Sports for Beginners, we were talking about the PWHL, among other things. We were talking about the PWHL, the NFL preseason, of course, the MLB, and we mentioned a couple of things going on around in the PWHL. I also mentioned the Raptors' upcoming preseason schedule and season schedule. And yeah, we were talking about October baseball. And look, October baseball is upon us. We're in September, so there's a lot to get excited for. We're 25 episodes in on season 4. We're on to episode 26. You're going to find out what's in store on that episode in a break time. After this break, though, however, a look at the MLB standings, a check-in on the Brewers and Phillies, and my key takeaway from Reds Blue Jays, the previous series that has just wrapped up. Stick around. Looking for a sports podcast that covers sports weekly as well as gets you set up for the day? Check out Weekly in Sports with me, Scott McGregor. We give some shout-outs of the week to podcasts like this one and those who do them. Discuss the Blue Jays, Bills, Raptors, and more. To learn more, check out the Sports for Beginners Facebook page. Search Sports for Beginners.
Take another look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo. Two powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
Looking for a good hockey podcast that covers your favorite hockey teams and mine? Check out On the Ice and Behind the Benches, where we chat about our favorite hockey teams from puck drop to the last play of the action. To learn more, follow the On the Ice and Behind the Benches Facebook page. Search On the Ice and Behind the Benches. Welcome back to Blue Jays Weekly Recap. My name is Scott. I am the host of Sports for Beginners, Weekly in Sports, as well as this show and a couple other bonus shows as well. Quick programming note for Blue Jays game recap. With hockey season fast approaching, the New York Yankees series will be the final series on the ice and behind the benches and Sports for Beginners cover for the 2025 season. However, ladies and gentlemen, the upcoming series between the Kansas City Royals, Baltimore Orioles, Houston Astros, and the Tampa Bay Rays, including both the series at home and on the road. And you know what? Why don't we add the Red Sox? All those series will be covered right here on Sports for Beginners on the final edition of Blue Jays Weekly Recap. So Blue Jays game recap is off for the remainder of the season until playoffs. Should the Jays make the playoffs, which is highly likely, as long as things continue to go Toronto's way, if they're able to take care of their business, and of course, things are able to go the way that they want them to go. But Blue Jays game recap on both sides is off. Both platforms, I should say, is off after the New York Yankee road trip. I will be in the studio to break down on 2 editions of Blue Jays Weekly Recap. Both will be bonus editions. The series with the Houston Astros and the Baltimore Orioles first and foremost, and later, after the season ends, the series with Tampa Bay, Kansas City, and Boston, including for Tampa Bay, the series when the Rays host the Blue Jays, and the series at home when the Blue Jays host the Rays. So just to recap, 2 editions, 2 bonus editions of Blue Jays Weekly Recap right here on Sports for Beginners, taking over the spot of Blue Jays Game Recap for the remainder of the 2025 season until playoffs with yours truly in the studio. They feature first a complete homestand recap with Houston and Baltimore. Then in episode number 2, I should say, it's Kansas City, Tampa Bay, and Boston, Tampa Bay, all in one series. All in one episode, I should say. So one is a homestand recap, the other is a road trip / homestand recap. Because of this, hockey season is around the corner, so our host of On the Ice and Behind the Benches and Blue Jays game recap here on this program and On the Ice and Behind the Benches will be getting ready to hit the ice for the 2025-2026 season for the entire NHL league, and therefore On the Ice and Behind the Benches will be going full throttle with ice content to get you ready for puck drop on the 2025-2026 season. Quick reminder, speaking of that, of action on opening night. We have a triple header on Tuesday, October 7th. That will be the Blackhawks and the Panthers from Florida at 5 p.m. Eastern. At 8 p.m. Eastern, the Pittsburgh Penguins open up their season at Madison Square Garden against the New York Rangers. Then at 10:30 p.m., it's the Kings hosting the Avalanche. So that is the Los Angeles Kings hosting the Colorado Avalanche. The New York Rangers hosting the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the reigning defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers host the Chicago Blackhawks on a Tuesday night triple header, October 7th, beginning at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Pacific, if I'm not mistaken. All right, I'll talk a little bit more hockey news later, but that was a quick programming note for both podcasts, Sports for Beginners and On the Ice and Behind the Benches. Just a reminder, Blue Jays game recap is off for the remainder of the season. After the New York Yankees road trip, Blue Jays Weekly Recap will take over when the Blue Jays begin a series at home against the Houston Astros, and then, of course, wrap up that homestand with a series against the Baltimore Orioles. And because of this change in content, On the Ice and Behind the Benches will be moving full throttle, getting ready for the 2025-2026 NHL regular season. Puck drops on Tuesday, October 7th, 2025, with the triple header as mentioned, Blackhawks at Panthers, Penguins at Rangers, and Avalanche at Kings. With that said, let's quickly, as we are at the halfway mark of the show, before we go taking a look at our action in around the MLB, including the action ongoing right now as we speak with you, let us quickly go over the wild card and the division standings in the MLB as play begins today. And, of course, goes into tomorrow. First, we're going to look at the American League and National League wild card. As we sit here, the Blue Jays and Tigers are tied in win record at 81. The Blue Jays are 81 and 59. The Tigers, 81 and 60. Both are still leaders of the American League East and American League Central. The American League West leader is the Houston Astros, who sit at a record of 77 and 63. Only one of those teams in the league leaders is playing today. That is the Houston Astros, wrapping up a series with the New York Yankees. Speaking of the New York Yankees, they are 77 and 62 with the Boston Red Sox. Both of those teams, the Yankees and Red Sox, are plus 4.5 games up in the wild card. The Red Sox are 78 and 63. The Yankees 77, I should say, and 62. Again, I said 72. I meant to say 77. Moving on, in the third wild card spot in the American League is another team like the Red Sox who are idle. That is the Seattle Mariners. They are 73 and 67, and they currently have the third wildcard spot in the American League. Those teams in the hunt include the 72 and 69 Texas Rangers, a game and a half, I should say, 1.5 games back of the wild card leaders, Red Sox, Yankees, and Mariners, specifically the Mariners for the third wild card spot. Also behind them, Seattle is 2.5 games up in the wild card on Kansas City. The Royals are 70 and 69. Also 70 and 69 are the Tampa Bay Rays. The Cleveland Guardians are at 500. They are 3 games out of the wild card. They have a record of 69 and 69. The Los Angeles Angels are 66 and 73, currently 6.5 games out, 6.5 games out. The Orioles are 9 games out of the wild card. As I mentioned in the division, they are 14 games out. Their record is 64 and 76. The Athletics are 64 and 77. They are 9.5 games out, 9.5 games out. 10.5 games out, 10.5 rather, are the Minnesota Twins at 62 and 77. I talked about the Orioles having a bad year, but I was dead wrong. The team that's had a really bad year in terms of the two Chicago teams is the one in the American League. The White Sox have not been great. They are 52 and 80 and 88. They are 52 and 88 and 21 games out of the wild card. Which makes me wonder, something that we'll wonder for another time, but it makes me wonder, how far out of the division are they? Let's move over to the National League. The National League leaders, including the wild card leaders, we have the Central leaders, who are also the best team in baseball in the entire MLB at 86 and 54, the Milwaukee Brewers, facing the Philadelphia Phillies, 80 and 59. The Philadelphia Phillies are the leaders in the National League Central. Milwaukee leading the National League Central. The National League East is being run by the Philadelphia Phillies at 80 and 59. The National League West is being run by the Los Angeles Dodgers. No surprise here. 78 and 61, the Dodgers record. The wild card, who do we got? Well, we got the Cubbies at 80 and 60, the Padres at 76 and 64, and the New York Mets at 75 and 65. The Cubbies are 5 games up in the wild card. The San Diego Padres only a game up in the wild card. Chicago and San Diego with the first 2 wildcard spots in the National League. The New York Mets with the third wildcard spot, they're at 75 and 65. The Colorado Rockies have been mathematically eliminated already from playoff contention, but they have a record of 39 and 101. They are 36 games out of the wild card. So, yep, they are out. No matter if they want to win the division or if they want to win the wild card. Well, they're not doing that. They're not doing either, to be honest. The Nationals, 56 and 83, 18 and a half games out of the wild card. Pittsburgh Pirates are 63 and 77, 12 games out of the wild card. Also 12 games out of the wild card, same record as Pittsburgh Pirates, are the Atlanta Braves, 63 and 77. The Miami Marlins are 65 and 75, 10 games out of the wild card. And you know what? They're also 10 games below 500. St. Louis could go right back to 500 if they if they win their game against San Francisco. They are 70 and 71, I should say. That's the Cardinals. Arizona also 70 and 71. Both the Cardinals and the Diamondbacks 5.5 games out of the wild card. The Cincinnati Reds, who the Blue Jays played 3 times this week already, are at 500 at 70 and 70. They are 5 games out of the wild card. The San Francisco Giants battling the Mets, who are 4 games up on the San Francisco Giants. Giants are 71 and 69. Mets, as mentioned, are 75 and 65. And these are the standings as of being updated at 3:01 p.m. Eastern Time today. I'm going to hit a refresh here to see if anything has changed. I don't think it has because, well, only one game is on right now as we speak. And yep, nothing has changed. So speaking of that game, let's go take a look at it. And a reminder of the games coming on, I should say, momentarily. It is 5:36 p.m. as we are talking to you now. Still no score between the Brewers and the Phillies, but the Brewers have a lead at 5 hits. Still to come tonight, the Pirates host the Dodgers at 6:40 p.m. Eastern. At 7:35 p.m. Eastern, the Guardians taking on the Rays. The Angels will take on the Royals at 7:40 p.m. Eastern. Also around that time, the Astros host the Yankees and the White Sox playing the Twins. So I know this is a Blue Jays weekly recap show, but I want to talk about this for a second. Look, I mentioned this before the break, but I'm just going to come out and say it. Teams like the Rockies, Orioles, White Sox, they're just not having a good year. The Orioles at a record of 64 and 76. Yeah, they're not bottom of the barrel anymore, but they are bottom of the barrel in the division. You got the White Sox 52 and 88. Yeah, they're not having a good year. White Sox 52 and 88. They are not having a good year. And then you got the Rockies, 39 and 101. Yeah, the Rockies have had a rough year. Changes, they've probably had to let a couple of guys go, but they had a lot. Like they had to go to an interim manager. They had to probably let a couple of guys go. Maybe some management decisions had to be made, but everything for the Rockies had to happen today. It had to happen this year. It had to happen this year. It really did. Because, I mean, 39 and 101, yeah, you're not having a good year. 52 and 88, yeah, okay. Kind of decent, but I do like where the Orioles are at right now. I know they're not, good, obviously, but they're making a case for that wild card. They're ahead of the Athletics and the Twins. And again, I mentioned their record 64 and 76. They pull off a couple of wins, especially wins against the Blue Jays, which as a Blue Jays fan myself, I hope doesn't happen. You could be talking about the Cinderella story of the 2025 season from the American League East in the Baltimore Orioles. What do you want to call it, a Cinderella story or whatever? I'm going to stand by what I said and say that Chicago, Baltimore, when I talk about Chicago, I'm not talking about the Cubs. I'm talking about the White Sox and Baltimore, the Orioles, and of course the Rockies. Rockies not having a good year. They're having a rough year. The Cubs and Orioles having decent years, but still rough years regardless. The Brewers are having a really good year. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to bring us to the closing moments of our show. We will take a quick commercial break to hear a word from our good buddy Ali Musa over at Broadcast Map. Following that, I will provide a broadcast map update, and of course, we will close out the show on the other side, getting you ready for the Yankees and the Jays. The probables are out, but you never really know. Those can change prior to first pitch, so be sure you stay tuned.
Looking for conversations on the world of broadcasting, sports media, and from time to time, my favorite sports teams? Listen to Broadcast Map with me, Ali Musa. To learn more about the show and to view the upcoming schedule, like the Broadcast Map Facebook page. Search Broadcast Map.
Welcome back to Blue Jays Weekly Recap. We have a couple of updates on the broadcast map side. We heard from broadcast map before we came back, as that was a 30-second timeout. This just in, Danielle Francesi is going to be on broadcast map for a Blue Jays show on Tuesday, September 9th, 2025 at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. That's next Tuesday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Central. We're talking Blue Jays on broadcast map. Also, 1 week reminder for Around the News returning Thursday, September 25. Becky Coles returns to broadcast map with Ali for a Around the News program, and you can check out Becky's work at http://www.beckycoles.com. The show will take place Thursday, September the 11th at 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Pacific. Once again, if you would like to check out the work of Becky Coles in the studio with Ali on Thursday, September the 11th, 2025, at 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Pacific for an Around the News show, please go to www.beckycoles.com. Go to www.beckycoles.com to check out Becky's work. That is it for our broadcast map update. By the way, that is a show now. It is a podcast, but it is also now a show because Ali has created the Broadcast Map Network. In fact, if you want to know more, check out the link in our show notes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we gotta wrap it up here. So, we are in the bottom of the sixth of the Phillies and Brewer game. That is still no score. 1 game underway, 5 games still to come of 6 games that were on total today. Those are the Pirates, Dodgers, Rays, Guardians, Angels, Royals, Yankees, Astros, and Twins, White Sox. All those games coming up momentarily. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have to breeze through this. A reminder, these starters probable for the Yankee Blue Jay series could change. First up, the game on Friday will feature for the Toronto Blue Jays, Kevin Gausman, who will get the ball. He is 8-10 this season with an ERA 3.75, 157 strikeouts this season. He will take on Yankees starter Cam Schittler, who is 2-2 this season. He has an ERA 2.61 and 54 strikeouts. The starters for the weekend game. First, the Saturday game, the Blue Jays will send Max Scherzer to the mound. Scherzer's record 5-2, ERA 4.11, 62 strikeouts for Scherzer. For Scherzer this season, 5-2. Luis Gil will get the start for the Yankees on Saturday. His record 2-1, ERA 3.68, 29 strikeouts. And last but certainly not least, that game at 1:05 p.m. Eastern. Sunday's game is at 1:35 p.m. Eastern. That is the 11-7 Chris Bassett with an ERA of 4.10 and 154 strikeouts against the 15-5 Max Fried, who would get the start for the Yankees. Fried's ERA this season, 2.98 with 100. All three of these games, including Friday, are not on Apple TV. They will be able to be heard on Yes Sportsnet and TVA Sports for Blue Jay listeners. Yes Network for the Yankees. On the radio for the Yankees, you can listen to the game on Fan 660 or 101.9 FM or WA 1280. And for Blue Jay fans, you can listen to the game on the radio side through Sportsnet 590 The Fan and the Sportsnet Radio Network, or even through the Sportsnet app. You can watch the game, as I mentioned, for Blue Jay fans on TVA Sports, but as well as Sportsnet. Coverage for Friday's game gets going with Blue Jays Central at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific, 5:30 4th, kicking things off. First pitch once again for the Friday game featuring, should it stay the same, Kevin Gausman against Cam Schittler, 7:05 p.m. Eastern, 6:05 p.m. Central, 4:05 p.m. Pacific, 5:05 p.m. Mountain. And again, for those listening to the game on TV, Blue Jay Central gets it started at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific, 5:30 Central, 4:30 Mountain on Sportsnet. And that's going to do it for another edition of Blue Jays Weekly Recap. My name is Scott McGregor. Thank you so much for being with us. I will talk to you after the New York Yankees series, briefly about that series, and I will also talk to you following the homestand with Houston and Baltimore. And then, of course, we will talk to you following that show, following Tampa Bay and Kansas City, Tampa Bay and Boston, as we prepare for October baseball in 2 shows' time. Blue Jays game recap has you the rest of the way for the New York Yankees series, and then we have you right here on Sports for Beginners on Blue Jays Weekly Recap for Astros, Orioles, Red Sox, Rays, and Royals. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Lights up. Let's go. Blue Jays. Enjoy the baseball action, everybody. I'll see you after the homestand and the conclusion of the second to last road trip of the 2025 season. Thank you so much for listening to Sports for Beginners. If you would like to learn more about the show, you can visit the podcast Facebook page or visit the official website. You can also send us an email at sportsforbeginnerspodcast8231@gmail.com. As we always remind you, it is not goodbye, it is until next time.